Welcome to Psychology Today. I'm your host, Ann Morrow. This is a show about bicycling in general and specifically about bicycle safety. Thanks for watching. I hope that Psychology Today helps inspire you to ride a bike or helps you to be more mindful of safety. We try to celebrate those people in our community that have incorporated bicycling into career choices somehow, or maybe some entrepreneurial endeavor, and those that strive to encourage others to ride bicycles or that support cycling and bike safety. Before we meet our guests, I want to make sure I thank our crew that could sabotage the whole show for me if I'm not nice to them, and thank them for their skills. Without them, we would not have a show. And thank you to our producer, Northwest Bicycle Safety Council. I'm the president of Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, and we've worked hard this year at different safety fairs and events, trying to make sure that young people in particular know the rules of the road and how to ride their bicycles safely. And as a part of that, we make sure that they have helmets on their heads that fit properly, so that hopefully they grow up to be adult cyclists and maybe cyclocross riders or whatever. And we're looking to the future already. We're looking into 2018 to see how Northwest Bicycle Safety Council can fit into our community and what we can do to help continue to promote bicycle safety and helmets on everyone's heads. Our first guest is a cyclocross racer, as I just kind of alluded to, and I think we've all enjoyed some cyclocross racers we've had on the show in the past that happen to be men. But this is not exclusive to men. A lot of women just love the sport, and so we've got a guest to talk about that and hopefully encourage some of us to get out there and give it a try. This is just kind of a big phenomenon, at least I know in our area, so it's interesting to hear about. Our second guest is the new executive director of the Street Trust, and we'll find out a little bit more about her and learn about the visions and activities of the Street Trust in the second half of our show. So let's get started, and we've got Mallory Miller here with us, and she is, as I said, a cyclocross racer, an avid cyclist. And welcome, Mallory. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So I always like to start with a little history. What's been your journey into cycling?
So I started in undergrad. I rode competitively all throughout undergrad, and I ended up losing eligibility when I went to grad school. And so I kind of was looking for a new sport and something different to try. I did a triathlon, but I really wasn't into swimming that much, and running's okay. And eventually, one of the guys on the collegiate cycling team convinced me to race for them while I was training for an Ironman. And I started getting more and more into cycling and just became more passionate about racing and just wanted to keep racing my bike. So.
And what part of the country was this that you were getting into all this?
So I was in the Midwest.
Okay.
I went to college in Cleveland, Ohio, and so we raced anywhere from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and kind of all in that region.
Wow, you really got around.
Yeah.
So what brought you to Portland?
So I came to Portland after grad school for a job, and I was kind of looking for jobs in cooler places, I guess. I love Cleveland and I love the Midwest, but kind of looking for something different. So I ended up in Portland, and it's been pretty awesome so far.
And about when did you move here?
I moved here in January,
okay,
around the time when the snow apocalypse was happening.
Being from the Midwest, you were probably kind of scoffing at us all.
Yeah, everyone was freaking out, and I was still commuting into work by bike on my cross bike. I was like, this is great training. But yeah, compared to Cleveland winters, it was really not that bad.
Sorry. Okay. Well, welcome to the Northwest.
Thank you.
So you are an avid cyclocross racer. So how did you get into cyclocross in the first place, and how was it introduced to you?
So in grad school, I started racing on the road, And my very third race ever, I had a pretty bad crash. It was a criterium, which, if you're not familiar, is a short circuit race, and you go around a loop multiple times for about an hour. It's very high speed. There's a lot of technical parts, so maybe a lot of turns and things like that. And it was the last lap, and I ended up, the girl in front of me went down, and because you're drafting so close to everyone, I didn't have time to react, and I woke up in the ambulance.
Oh, gosh.
And that's what the scar on my chin is from. And my helmet was completely destroyed, but it probably saved my life.
Yeah.
So after that crash, it took me a couple months to fully recover. I couldn't race the remainder of the road season, and I wanted to continue racing, but I also wanted to improve my bike handling skills so that something like this wouldn't happen in the future or could maybe be prevented. So I figured I should try cyclocross, and so that's kind of how it got started.
Was it hard for you in general to get back on your bike, having been in an accident? Did you kind of struggle a little bit, or did you hop right back on?
Not really at all. The hardest thing was that I was not allowed to ride outside for about a month, and training, really just kind of functioning for a little bit was difficult because I had a pretty severe concussion.
Okay.
But because I don't remember the crash, I wasn't afraid. Criteriums still kind of scare me a little bit because you are going really fast and some things are out of your control, but you just have to be aware and kind of know how to handle your bike and not to freak out when something happens, I guess.
So do you feel you've kind of met that objective, at least starting to, with the cyclocross, like getting more skills?
Maybe. I think I really just found a different hobby or a different interest, I guess. But I definitely think racing cross has helped me feel more comfortable on and off the road on my bicycle. And I do feel a little bit more confident with bike handling skills, for sure.
Good. So you obviously ride competitively, so I'd like to go into the cyclocross season and kind of go through some of the different aspects of cyclocross so that other people that might be interested can kind of know what to expect and know what it's all about and see how they might get involved as well.
Definitely.
So how did you get started? There's different series and stuff. How did you even jump into this? Did somebody help you, or looked online and just sign up?
So I think the first few times I rode off-road, I borrowed my coworker's mountain bike. And at the time, I was riding with the guy that I was dating, and I was just trying really hard to not cry. And I was like, this is so fun, I swear. We're riding off-road on really low-key trails, but the trees just seemed so close to me and so close to my handlebars, and I'd never really ridden off-road before. That it was terrifying to me. And we probably had to stop every 10 minutes or so. So that was kind of my first experience with off-road riding. And then I ended up getting a cross bike because I was like, all right, I'm doing this. It'll be fun. I'll get better at it. And the first time I pre-rode a cross course with some of my collegiate teammates, I also freaked out and was crying then too, because I was like, how am I supposed to do this? There were all these crazy off-camber turns downhill, and it was really scary. But I kept practicing and kept working at it, and I was determined to get better. So I kept riding off-road and riding with people who were more skilled than me and kind of seeing how they do things. And at the cross races, I would always stick around and watch the more skilled riders race and just see what lines they take and how they kind of do it.
Yeah, that's a great reason to ride with other people or to be with other people, because you really pick up a lot. So so do I have to have a cross bike then if I want to get into the cross season?
No, you definitely don't. And a lot of people I have seen in the entry-level races just race on mountain bikes with flat pedals in regular clothes even. You don't need anything fancy to have fun and to race on a cross course. And actually, it could almost be easier on a mountain bike because you can ride over things a little bit easier maybe.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as fast, but you can definitely still do it.
So that's a great way to start, and maybe you find out you like it and you really get the cross bike that's designed for that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
Or not. Or maybe you just stick with your mountain bike and have a good time pedaling around the course, and don't worry about that you're not the first place and stuff. You're just having a good time.
Yeah.
You can make it what you want. So if I show up at the cyclocross race at one of these, there's lots of events going on every weekend. What do I need to do if I want to try a race? What do I need to do?
So I guess all you really need to do logistically is register. I like to pre-register so you don't have to worry about it day of. And you can do that using the OBRA website or USA Cycling. And yeah, you just need a bike, a helmet. You would need to purchase a license to race, which day of licenses are pretty cheap. And I generally like to pre-ride the course, just to see, to kind of come up with a game plan and how I'm going to do the race. So I think that's always extremely beneficial to pre-ride the course. And you would have to look ahead and see if there are certain time frames where they allow people to pre-ride, or if you can do that maybe the day before.
Oh, okay.
But I think that's definitely really important, just so you can kind of practice parts that maybe scare you or you're not as confident. Try to figure out the fastest lines. And then also, again, like I mentioned, come up with a game plan. So if there are certain features that you're afraid to ride over, or if you're not 100% confident that you can do successfully each time. So like if there's a log or barriers and you know that maybe you could bunny hop them when you're just kind of casually riding, but maybe not during a race when you aren't thinking straight or thinking quickly, then maybe it's best to just kind of plan on running that every single time, rather than risk crashing, which takes up more time, or getting a flat or something like that.
Then you've got a mechanical or something and you're done.
Yeah, so definitely pre-riding the course. And
people are really friendly, at least it's been my experience, that if you ask people and if they're experienced, they will help you figure things out if you don't know what to do.
Definitely. And I actually always go up to my teammates or people that I know are more skilled than I am and ask them if I can follow them around the course when we pre-ride, because I like to see what lines they take so then I can kind of try that out myself. And yeah, I think that definitely helps.
And how do you even know what the course is? I mean, where you go out to a park or the woods or the whatever, how do you even know where to be riding?
So for the races, they're all marked. There will be stakes and everything will be taped off, or sometimes they have certain areas with cones. And for all of the Oregon races, there's one side with yellow cones and the other side with red cones.
Oh, okay.
And so it's easy to know which direction the course is going because the red cones are always on the right side.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So sometimes it can get confusing, especially if there's a lot of turns and stuff. So you always have to remember, like, red on the right.
Yeah, because they can be kind of switchback type things where the course is kind of following itself and like a wiggly thing. Yeah, and so you're right, you could get confused. And so what's the timing situation? Do you have to do so many laps, or is it a half an hour, or how does that work?
So that depends on the category. So like the entry level categories will generally do about a half hour. And then maybe the category 1, 2 racers will do an hour. And they try to estimate the number of laps that it will take the leader to do in an hour.
Okay.
And kind of base it off of that. So there's always a lap counter by the start finish that you need to kind of keep an eye on. And so yeah, they'll let you go a certain number of laps just to kind of get the timing figured out, and then they'll start the lap counter.
Oh, okay.
And they always give you a bell with 1 lap to go.
Okay, so you kind of know.
Yeah, unless you're pretty far behind the leader, then they might pull people a little bit earlier or 1 lap early, so you just kind of have to pay attention to that as well.
So if you're super, super slow, you might get pulled off because you've been lapped by everybody. And sometimes don't they have like your group starts and then another group starts maybe 30 seconds later? So how does that work?
So so that's kind of, those categories are different races all together, even though you're all on the course at the same time. So like for a lot of the races I do, so I'm a category 2 racer, so I do the 1-2 race generally, and the women's 1-2 will race at the same time as the men's 1-2.
Oh, okay.
So all of us do an hour, and we're all on the course at the same time, but they'll start the men first, and then a minute later they'll start us. And it can be a little bit confusing because if the men lap you, then you might be doing 1 less lap than what's on the counter. But you're not scored with them. So the women are all scored separately and they're doing their own race.
Right. Okay. So last year my son races up by Seattle, and so they invited me, he and his girlfriend invited me up, to come join them and do a beginner ride. And like you're saying, I just took my mountain bike because I don't have a cross bike. And you're right, just they signed me up, they pre-registered me. And so I just went and got a chip on my helmet and just rode the course on my mountain bike. And, I was not competitive at all, but it was really fun. And somehow the way they set up the groups, my granddaughter, who was like 10 then, was also on the course at the same time, and I managed to catch up with her by exerting all the last energy I had left to cross the finish line together with her. So it was a lot of fun. And just, I just went out and rode, and it was not any big deal. Everybody's very helpful and friendly and just having a good time. So, you can make it what you want it to be.
Exactly. And I think it's a lot less pressure because with road racing, if you get dropped from the group, it's not really as fun anymore because you're not in the race. And I don't know.
Can't draft, it's so important to draft off people, whereas cyclocross is kind of, you're just on your own.
Everyone's just racing as hard as they can anyway. And granted, you are racing the people who are in front of you and like all around you, but you can also just kind of like race yourself as well.
And just kind of compete with yourself. So you're obviously, taking care of yourself, very fit. What do you do nutritionally and physically to stay in the game as far as, because you can't ride your bike all the time, and what else do you do to keep fit?
So I guess for cyclocross especially, it's really important to do core exercises. And I generally tend to let that go in the summer when I'm doing a lot of road riding and road racing. But definitely once cross season comes around, start doing more core exercises and doing a lot more yoga, stretching.
Okay. And nutrition, what kinds of foods do you like to eat, particularly right before a race?
So right before a race, I get really, really nervous and I can't eat a lot and I lose my appetite the day of. But I always force myself to eat oatmeal, and I eat the same thing before every race. So I always have oatmeal with a banana and peanut butter and some agave syrup. And that's my pre-race
That's your
meal.
go-to meal. And I think a lot of people have that. And I asked you to, like a ritual or a superstition that you have for your race.
Oh, yeah. So my bib numbers, for some reason, I just always have to have 7 pins. And
that's
I
really
guess
cute.
maybe that's the one weird thing. But like I get stressed out if someone puts 6 in when they pin my number. Like I have to have 7.
I think that's really cute. So how many bicycles do you have? I'm going to ask you that. How many bicycles? I think I like to know.
So most people would probably think this is maybe a little excessive, but I have 7 bikes. But I use them all.
Yeah.
Regularly. I have my cross bike, of course. I have 2 road bikes. I have a commuter bike just to get around town. I don't use my car a lot, so I use that all the time. I have a full suspension mountain bike and a hardtail mountain bike for more off-road riding. And then I also have a time trial bike. So
I don't think that's excessive. So what's on your wish list? What bike would you is next?
This past weekend, my friend got married. So instead of doing the usual Cat 1-2 race on Saturday, I did the women's single speed race. And I just zip tied my shifters so that I couldn't shift gears.
Oh, that works?
It does. Well, kind of. It worked well enough so that I could do the race.
Okay.
But now I really want a single speed cross bike because it was a lot of fun, and it's just not having gears. You have to think about being a lot more efficient on the course.
Okay.
And also just pedaling a lot faster on the straight sections and kind of like going harder before you go up the climbs and things. And it was, I don't know, it was just different, and it was interesting, and now I kind of want a single speed.
I can see where it would really change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Make it different. And just what words of encouragement might you have for somebody that's thinking about getting into cyclocross?
I mean, I think they should definitely try it. Like, just do what's fun for you. And the thing with cross is you can come and do the beginner races, and then you can hang out for the rest of the day at the course and just kind of drink beers and cheer for other people. You can go to some of the more technical sections and heckle people. And I don't know, I guess the atmosphere at the cross races is just a lot of fun to be a part of as well. So you don't necessarily have to be a super competitive athlete to have fun.
Right. And it's something, I don't know, that here it is getting kind of wet and muddy and everything, and you're just really kind of getting going in cyclocross. That's when it really gets fun. You kind of been waiting for it to get a little muddy.
Definitely.
And all that instead of dry and hot. And so you're just kind of getting into it. So you don't want to be maybe a dirt freak kind of. You got to be ready to get muddy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And your bike.
Yes, because everything will be covered in mud, but that's the best part.
And usually there's places to kind of wash off your bike, and and you figure out how to deal with your clothes so that you're not just getting in a muddy mess into your car to drive home. So you figure all that stuff out.
Bring towels with you.
And just one last thing, just quickly, how would you just encourage women in general to be part of the biking scene, whether it's cyclocross or whatever they choose?
I think that you just have to get on your bike and do what is fun for you. Like whether that be going for a ride in Forest Park and just be surrounded by nature, or a chill ride down on the waterfront. Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of women-only nights at, like you could go to the velodrome and do that, or there's women's-only mountain bike nights at the lumberyard.
Okay.
And like I've been to that before, and just a good group of women that you can practice skills with and just kind of have a good time with your friends. So I guess just getting out on a bike and figuring out what's fun, what you enjoy.
What's for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you're figuring that out for you.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Mallory, for joining us. That was really encouraging and just fun to hear about your cyclocross adventures and all the stuff that you're doing. It'll be interesting to see where you find yourself in the next 5 or 10 years as far as cycling.
Thank you.
I got to believe that you'll evolve and keep growing. So fun. Good
Definitely.
for you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's good for you. So we learned a little bit about cyclocross racing, and certainly hope that you're encouraged to give that a go. And we're going to go to a safety video about bicycle safety, because Northwest Bicycle Safety Council is all about safety. And then we'll come back with our second guest, Jillian Detweiler from the Street Trust.
Maybe you ride to school. Maybe you ride for fun. Either way, when you're on a bike, you want to get where you're going safely. To do that, you need to remember a few key things. Be visible, follow the rules of the road, and be predictable. Okay, that's it, we're done. Well, not done exactly. We might have a few more things to say. When we say be visible, what we mean is be easy to see. Drivers should be watching for you, and they are, but do your part. Make sure your bike is ready for riding, and that includes having working lights and reflectors. In the daytime, wear bright colors. At night, wear something reflective, either clothing or gear. And dress for safety. If you're wearing loose pants, for example, strap down the pant leg on the chain side of the bike, like this, so it won't get caught while you're riding. And wear a bike helmet when you ride. It may or may not be the law where you live, but it's always a good idea. Of course, part of the idea of wearing a helmet is not to put it to the test, not to have a wreck in the first place. And that's all about where you choose to ride and how you do it. Bikes are considered vehicles. So when you're riding a bike on the road, follow the same rules as car drivers do. Just like a driver, you need to look for and obey road signs and traffic signals. We're talking stop signs, yield signs, red lights, and so on. Keep to the right, but far enough from parked cars so you don't get clipped by a door that opens suddenly. Usually that's at least 3 feet. But what happens when you don't have 3 feet? When the lane narrows, for example. That's when you need to take the lane. Taking the lane means that you move into the center of the lane, just like a car. You should do this when the lane narrows or when you're coming up to an intersection or some other kind of turn. In these situations, the center of the lane is usually the best place to be. When it's time to change lanes, you should look for traffic, signal, and then move one lane at a time. Traffic will always be changing, so it's important to look and signal each time you want to change lanes. Anytime you're uncomfortable with a traffic situation, you have choices. You can get off the bike and walk on the sidewalk. You can choose a different route, one that has bike lanes, or slower traffic. or you can use a combination of bike and transit. But no matter where you're riding, a road or a trail, always watch out for people walking. Move out of their way, and let them know when you're about to pass them on the left.
On your left.
If there's one thing drivers count on, it's predictability. So one of the best ways to be safe is to be predictable. For example, use hand signals before you turn or stop. Ride in the same direction the cars are going, with the flow of traffic, not against it. And don't assume that drivers will see you just because you see them. You already know this part, but we're gonna say it anyway. Put your phone away while you're riding. You don't want to be talking or texting because you need to be alert and paying attention to what you're doing. Same goes for earbuds or headphones. You need to hear what's going on around you, so leave them in your bag for later. Keep both hands on the handlebars unless you're signaling, and keep your eyes open for hazards, things like wet roads, gravel, debris, anything that can mess with your ride. As we said up front, it really comes down to three things. Be visible, be predictable, and follow the same rules as a car. Make sure that drivers can see you, that you let them know what you're about to do, and that you're following the rules of the road. That's it. Have a good ride.
Well, we're back with Psychology Today, and that was a great safety video, a lot of good points there. And I think I particularly enjoyed the idea of being predictable while you're on your bicycle and kind of holding a straight line so that cars kind of know what to expect. And those arm signals, which that is the law, to signal your turns and things, again, so that automobile drivers know what you're going to do. That'll keep you safe. So we're back with the show, and we've got Jillian Detweiler here. She's the new Executive Director of the Street Trust. We're going to learn a little bit about her and, most importantly, what the Street Trust is up to and what they envision their future to be. So welcome, Jillian. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Ann.
Glad to have you here. So you're the new Executive Director, and so congratulations to you. That's a big deal, I think, here in the Portland area.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be in this position.
So give us just a little bit of history so that we get to know you just a little bit better.
All right. Well, I grew up all over the country, but I got to the Portland, Oregon area as soon as I could. I came here to go to Lewis and Clark. But when I graduated a long time ago, there wasn't as much happening here. So I went back to Washington, D.C. and worked there. And then I got a degree in urban planning at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And that's where I learned that Oregon had the first statewide land use planning and that Portland was really trying to distinguish itself as a city. So I came on back and I have worked here in the transportation and land use field ever since.
Well, good. Well, boy, lucky us, huh? Yeah. Glad you're here. So I think the big news is, a little bit of old news, but it is the big news that the Street Trust was formerly known as the Bicycle Transportation Alliance, BTA, and now it's the Street Trust. So why the name change?
Well, our board adopted a broader mission about a year ago, and it reflects work that we have done for some time. We have been advocates for bicycles and bicycle facilities for more than 25 years. But over that period, we found that walking and transit were critical allies. And so the name change reflects that we now advocate for walking, biking, and transit. And we're trying to support a system that meets more of people's trips. Many trips can be met by bicycle, but sometimes walking is more convenient, more appropriate, and sometimes you need to link with transit to make those longer trips or to travel through environments where walking and biking aren't so pleasant. So that's why the name change. We have a broader mission, and we feel the Street Trust represents that The streets are there for all of us. They are for all of the modes, and that fits our new, broader mission of walking, biking, and transit.
And that certainly makes sense. Name changes are hard, though.
Yes.
And that does make sense that you're more all-encompassing than not just bicycles.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about the Street Trust program areas? What kinds of things are you working on?
Well, we have 3 main program areas. Education is one of them, encouragement is another, and advocacy is the final area. With education, we have support from the Portland Bureau of Transportation and also the Oregon Department of Transportation to provide bicycle and pedestrian safety training in schools. And there we're typically connecting with kids in about the 5th grade, offering 10 hours of walking and biking safety, and that culminates in a ride. And in every one of those classes, we are encountering kids who might not know how to ride a bike at all. So it's work that we do with volunteers and in partnerships with schools, and the people who are engaged in that just find it incredibly rewarding to open up kids to bicycling, to have that physical activity, and that sense of independence and agency that kids can get through learning to bike. So we have instructors who are directly in the schools doing that. We also have a fleet of bikes, and we make that available to one community in the state each year. So this year we moved our fleet from Prineville, where they use the bikes, to Seaside. We take the bikes to Seaside. We train educators in Seaside on bicycle safety, and then they train the kids, and they have that fleet of bikes available to them. So that kind of captures our education piece. Then we have encouragement, and so we know bicycle facilities have really improved a lot, but we've got to get people using them. And it takes encouragement to get people to maybe use different habits. And our largest program is now called the Bike More Challenge, and it used to be called the Bike Commute Challenge. But we're really trying to get people using bikes for all kinds of trips. And so it's a program that usually businesses sign up. They use it as a team building exercise for their employees, getting them riding bikes, counting their miles, competing against other businesses, and you'll see planning firms competing against planning firms, or bicycle shops competing against bicycle shops. And last year we had 12,445 participants in that. So that was a record number. We have an Access to Bike program where we lead rides in communities where cycling is not as prevalent. We're trying to reach women, people of color, low-income neighborhoods, and get those folks on bikes. And then we also have a women bike program, and that's both meetups and an online community encouraging women to cycle. So finally, we have our advocacy work, and that's how I knew the BTA the most, and it's still a very important part of the Street Trust work. We focus on institutional change and trying to redirect transportation money into active transportation. And so this year in the Oregon legislature, we succeeded in securing $125 million for Safe Routes to School. That's money that will go to local communities to improve sidewalks, bike lanes, crossings within a mile of elementary and middle schools, and start to address the deficiencies that really make it unsafe for kids to walk to school. Another win that we got in this legislature was over $1 billion for transit. And so again, through the Oregon Department of Transportation, they'll create a program that allows local transit agencies to increase service and to make capital investments like better buses or improvements to bus stops that make transit service in communities throughout the state more safe, more convenient, more attractive. So we had a great year with this legislature and the passage of the transportation bill.
So pretty diverse. I mean, it's all, like you say, transportation oriented,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of things, a lot of pieces that don't necessarily directly stick together, but they all
Yeah.
are kind of the same.
Yeah.
So I'm of the opinion that if it wasn't for the formerly BTA, now the Street Trust, that cyclists maybe wouldn't have any real voice in the state legislature as far as advocacy. For instance, if maybe a law needs to be changed to protect vulnerable road users or something, do you think that's true, or are there other voices for us?
I think the Street Trust is one of the leading voices. We are partners with other organizations who might support walking, biking, and transit for environmental reasons. There are organizations that are comprised mainly of people who have lost family members due to traffic incidents, and they can be very powerful allies.
Sure.
Someone who, if you had a family member killed on a bike, you might be a really effective advocate for safe cycling facilities.
Or some particular aspect that resulted in your loved one's death.
Yeah. But we find allies in many places. There are, of course, legislators who ride bikes and have family members who ride bikes, and we try and connect with them on that basis. But we are probably the best established, most well-known organization working on a statewide level to improve cycling facilities.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because we do need a voice.
Yeah.
Now you kind of touched on the women bike, and we just went through, September was Women's Bike Month.
Yay!
But you have Grandparents' Day or Mother's Day, but you should have this stuff all year long, because all year we want to encourage women to ride. So tell us in a little more detail what that program entails and why women might want to touch base with you about that.
Well, we have a staff person who is dedicated to women biking, and so we have meetups where you can go for a ride. We have coffees, we have happy hours, and it's just trying to create a community among women. And then I think the most important aspect of it is the online community. So if you become a Women Bike member, you have access to a Facebook page that's closed to non-members. And it provides a space for you to ask any question that you might have about cycling. And those range from, we encounter people who don't really know how to change gears. Maybe they've had a bike in the garage for a long time and are looking for advice about where to take it to get it fixed up. Or, where can they get training to learn how to fix a flat tire, to people having questions about commuting to work and how do you manage your clothes and, what do you do with your hair. I encountered in this job, my new job, a kind of bike rack that I'd never had to hang my bike before. And it was and I was quite discouraged trying to lift my bike up and get it on this hook.
Yeah.
And then my colleague showed me how I could use my hip to get some leverage and get my bike right up.
Okay.
That made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I took that to a Women Bike Coffee, and people were like, yeah, and that's also how you can get a little leverage to get your bike on a hook on the max.
Yeah.
So we're sharing tips like that all the time that keep those little, frustrations from getting in the way of people using their bikes, women using their bikes for more and different kinds of trips.
And I often say that the internet is great. You could go out on the internet and find a lot of information, but talking to one another and having dialogues and kind of getting to know each other and making new friends and getting just some little goofy tidbit of information that really makes a difference in the way you can do things. And like you say, maybe takes away an obstacle. It just makes all the difference. And so that seems like a great program to have that basis and kind of that mentoring. I think that's a part of it. That one-on-one you know, a little bit of gentle hand holding and helping you through it.
Right.
And commuting is kind of a whole nother entity in itself. Like you say, all those little elements of the clothing, the how do I look professional when I get to work? How do I find the right route to get there?
Yeah, routes are actually a big issue. There are more and more resources for routes, but that's one where there's probably no substitute for having actually ridden it.
Yeah.
So when you start talking to people about, well, if you find Williams intimidating, Rodney is the parallel route. I'm talking about, you know, North Portland now,
Yeah.
but Rodney is the parallel route it's a little slower, but it's very safe and less trafficked. And so it's great to get tips like that from fellow women riders.
Yes. And things, well, a map is great. It doesn't give you all those little clues about things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's great. So what do you see as a key component for safe streets?
Well, in an ideal world, every mode gets its own space and it's separated. So pedestrians have their spot, bicycles have their spot, you know, transit has a place that it can go and arrive in a timely manner, and then those are all separated from automobiles. You know, we have that in some places, but certainly not enough places. And in other places, it's just probably not practical. We don't have the public space to separate everybody. So then, you know, clear markings are really important. Things like, you know, you see the green bike lanes now and the marked crossings. You see, you know, special lights for bikes to be able to get through intersections. We would love to see more protected bikeways. So there may not be the space to fully separate bikes from cars, but at least have, you know, something like a post that is more obvious to cars not to cross into that bike lane area. So we're looking for more places that you can have that. And I do want to stress, I think not everybody recognizes that bikes and peds don't always mix very well. And so that's why in the summer when there's so much traffic on the Portland riverfront, we really like having that bike lane out on NATO so that you're not having to weave in and out of the joggers and the people just enjoying the river when you're on a bike and you're actually trying to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And those joggers can be kind of unpredictable, and you want them to have their safe space too.
Yes, yes. I experienced that just a few weeks ago on a ride where there was a march of some sort. So it was the waterfront was taken up by the people doing their march, and I had hoped to ride there. But that was okay, because you're right, just bopped over to NATO Parkway, could still see the river, still kind of enjoy that whole ambiance there along the waterfront and the park, but yet didn't have to worry about a lot of pedestrians, because you're right, even going slowly, you're still going faster than a walker typically, and it's just challenging. And so why take the chance?
Yeah.
And so fortunately, NATO Parkway is really nice.
Yeah. But I've had the opportunity to ride more and in more places that I'm less familiar with since I've had this job.
Oh.
You know, I was working at a certain spot and had my routes, and in going out and meeting people like you in different locations, I'm seeing what the region has to offer in terms of facilities, and, you know, really finding that there have been a lot of improvements. But there's still a long way to go.
Yes. Well, and I often say if you could wave a magic wand and time and money was no object, how differently we would build Portland, knowing that we wanted this space for cyclists and pedestrians, because there were certain generations where, I mean, I think even in the 60s, we weren't thinking about people walking. We didn't put sidewalks in neighborhoods because we were going to drive our cars.
Right.
Now we want a bike lane and a sidewalk, doggone it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're right, there isn't always any place to put them, sadly.
Right, yeah.
In retrospect.
Yeah. Well, and if you think of downtown Portland, I mean, those streets were actually designed before the automobiles was
Yeah.
predominant. So it was streetcars, and it was horses, and it was
Uh-huh.
people walking and biking.
Uh-huh.
And then, you know, the car kind of took that away from us, and we got out of balance. And, you know, now we're finding we really need to build, you know, make more space for bikes. We can't fit all the cars in
No.
to serve all the jobs that we have in downtown Portland or some of our other job centers. So we need to give a little more space to walking, biking, and transit.
And it's just generally healthy.
Yeah.
We keep hearing you need to move your body
Yes. Yeah.
somehow or another.
Yes, absolutely.
I was going to share too, I led a ride this last weekend, and we had two couples, one couple of whom had moved here from the East Coast. And to show them, we started at Lentz Park, so kind of East Portland, and came down Harrison and Clinton.
Yep.
Well, Clinton first coming down, and then Clinton and Ladd's Addition. I made it through there without getting lost.
The Lads Edition Vortex. I got lost there just the other day.
Well, at least there's a lot of roses to look at.
Right.
And then
Have I seen that rose before? I think, yeah.
It's true. And then down by OMSI, and then we took the Springwater back up. And to introduce newcomers to our area to some of those treats that we have built into our new into our area is just so much fun. And to go to, then we went to Cartlandia off the
great.
Springwater, and they really enjoyed that idea. So anyway, it's just fun to ride your bike around and see different areas from the seat of a bike, and different neighborhoods, and what people are doing with their yards, and the different smells of people cooking different things. It's just a lot of fun.
Yep.
So let's talk about, you just had the Alice Awards. What is the Alice Awards? And
So every year we choose a person or an organization that we think has really contributed to the mission of walking, biking, and transit, someone that has inspired us. So this year the winner was the Youth Environmental Justice Alliance, and these are young people who are supported by an organization called Opal to advocate for environmental issues that are important to them, and they selected getting transit passes for youth in East Portland. So there'd been a disparity where Portland Public School kids were getting a youth pass, but other schools in the city of Portland, David Douglas and Park Rose, were not part of that program. And so these young people lobbied the city and worked with their own school districts and secured transit passes.
wow, good for them.
Yeah, and it, you know, not only did they get transit passes, but the young people who participated became leaders and learned about the political process, and I think are, you know, really now well prepared to graduate from high school and go pursue their dreams. So it's that leadership building is just as important as the accomplishments that they had for transit and you know, for their peers in their community.
Yeah, that's great. That's kind of a different twist. That's interesting.
We also awarded a Bud Clark Lifetime Achievement Award this year. That doesn't happen every year, but we awarded it to Shane McRhodes. He is an advocate in the Eugene area, and he was critical to helping us achieve that Safe Routes to School funding that we got from the legislature. He helped organize a conference around Safe Routes to School that really made it clear that communities all over the state are looking for funding to be able to fix the infrastructure around their elementary and middle schools. And Shane is a previous Alice Award winner. We couldn't give him another Alice, so he, we felt, merited this Lifetime Achievement Award.
Well, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
Well, we've just got a couple more minutes. How can people get involved with the Street Trust?
Great. Well, we are a membership organization, and you can go to thestreettrust.org to become a member, read about our services, connect with Women's Bike and other encouragement programs that we have.
And you do have a very comprehensive website.
Yeah.
And and just lots of things to look at
Sure.
to help you get involved. And
Yep.
volunteer opportunities.
Yes, most of those are around the education work that we do in schools, but we are also sometimes looking for help with advocacy and representation on bicycle and pedestrian and transit committees all over the region. So we would love for people to connect with the Street Trust, become a member, and look at volunteer opportunities.
Great. I know a lot of the some of the Portland Wheelmen over different time periods have volunteered with the Safe Routes to School thing with the bike riding part.
It's so
and
much
just
fun.
really enjoyed it. Just
Yeah.
really can't say enough about what a great experience it is to ride with young people who have been through that class and help them learn to ride the city streets and just, give them that little bit of advice for their time in the saddle. So
Yes.
it is a good program that people really like taking part in. And it's not a huge time commitment. It's kind of in the spring, and for the most part.
Well,
isn't
no,
it?
we're doing it
You're
year-round. I'll be at
year-round?
regular
Okay.
school on Thursdays. So
Okay.
yeah, we do it year-round.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, Jillian, and I wish you well in this new endeavor. I'm really, that's quite an accomplishment, so good for you.
Thanks for having me. Ann.
We're fortunate to have such great people here working in our community for bicycling and working for all of us. So I hope that you'll come ride with us. I belong to Portland Wheelman Touring Club, pwtc.com, and look for bike rides there if you want to get involved with cycling, and certainly reach out to the Street Trust if you happen to be a woman and you're looking for that kind of encouragement and help. But other bike rides, like I said, I just did a pretty easy bike ride last Sunday and a group ride where we all stay together. So look at those ride definitions so that you know what to expect. And Bruce Buffington, who's here in the studio as well, also leads rides on the west side of town if you want to explore more Washington County area. There's a lot of good riding still in the fall, so I encourage you to give this a try and keep that foundation that you've built over the summer, or it's a great time to start riding. So like we watched in the video, I encourage you to use your arm signals. It's the law. Let people know if you're going to make a turn. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.